We wait for the host to start.
Yeah, I just pressed start, so hopefully we'll be any minute live.
It is just a lag, so
Yeah.
you will go.
Okay. Hi. So, welcome everybody. This is the third of my series of live events where I discuss with leading individuals, all the changes that we're seeing at the moment when it comes to AI and legal technology. My name is Dr. Karina Brink. I'm a UK and European patent attorney, and I have a hybrid role working part-time in-house for an artificial general intelligence startup in Sweden called IntuiCell. And at the same time, I'm a patent attorney consultant for a full-service IP firm in the UK called 2IP. So why have I founded this series? It's because I chaired an event last year, all to do with AI tools, and I realized that it's actually overwhelming so many people from so many different technical disciplines. There's a lot of questions that people need to ask, there's a lot of uncertainty, and people have concerns about how they will go forwards in their careers when AI is taking over some of the issues of what we do, but also opening up so many opportunities in other areas. I handle computer implemented inventions all the time. And yet even I am sometimes baffled and surprised and amazed by what we can now do and explore. So these events are to inform you about, how we can generate valuable data, how we can add value to what we do, but to give everybody hopefully a little bit more confidence as we navigate these times of change. So I'm very pleased, because I know I have a like mind here about the opportunities that some AI tools are opening up, to welcome Jeff Roy, who is a co-founder of Fluidity IQ, which is a semantic search engine, but it does so much more. So, Jeff, perhaps you'd introduce yourself now and let people know a little bit more about you and your background and what drove you to really, pursue the career that you have in IP and computer tech.
Yeah, no, thank you, and thanks for having me. I think I've been in the information industry really for 30 years. And some of that in IP, a lot of that in financial markets. But, I kind of consider myself an information professional as opposed to an IP professional per se. Mm-hmm. And later in my career, I did get involved with an IP business, and I fell in love with IP. There's a couple things I really like about it. I like the data. As a data professional, I think the data is really interesting, and it hasn't really been fully utilized, I think, within IP practices, and more importantly, even outside what I would call non-core IP use cases. So, why did we form Fluidity IQ is primarily because we think that there's an opportunity there. We think we can capitalize on the intelligence that's baked within, or that's inherent within IP data. I do think that the IP industry is at this really interesting inflection point that we've seen in financial services maybe 10, 15 years ago. And it's a really interesting time to figure out how can you extract more value? How do you use the technology? Because the technology has really evolved in the last few years. And how do you extract like real intelligence and context from the work that everybody's already doing? So we started Fluidity IQ in 2023 to capitalize on those opportunities. And we are a bunch of data guys and gals. Like, we've been in the industry, in the IP industry for a while, or we've been in financial markets and financial data for as much as 30 years. So again, we see the industry at this inflection point, not dissimilar from what you saw with the internet, 25 years ago.
And I think you touched on something that's really close to my heart. So I used to work at Nokia, and I did lots of claims charting and reviewed a lot of their IP. And you're trawling through a lot of information. You're looking for licensing targets. You're looking for potential infringement. And from that perspective, when you're analyzing data like that, the advantages that having sophisticated AI tools can bring to the business are huge in terms of finding new reads, in terms of finding new targets. And I think there's going to be a huge impact when it comes to areas like, due diligence, pre-litigation searches, licensing opportunities. But also when it comes down to the sort of ground roots of pre-filing searches, one of my biggest, and I'm an old soul here, so I remember as a trainee back in the days, wading through under the instructional patent, hundreds of patents that you used to have to pay for how long you spent on the data interface to locate, to try and sift through if there was anything that was relevant towards whether an invention was novel. And as a result of that, you also got a feel for what was going on in the space. It gave you an understanding of you were going to draft something, where to pitch that. But then what the client actually saw, because I started off in private practice, was just a sort of limited summary, because they didn't need to see that data. Nobody had the time. They didn't want to. You sold that package. This is my opinion to that particular client. And that's almost persisted. We've got to the stage now where, so many pre-filing searches, you get 3 results and nobody sees the data set, so they can't query it. And if you decide, oh, gee, that is too close, you have to stop the whole process. There's no engagement with the inventors. Nobody has an opportunity to review. And one of the things that's really struck me, and I have looked at your tool, is the fact that it does allow to have more intuitive insights into the data. Even at that stage where you're looking for where the invention is, you can share that information with other people within an organization and extract value. And I think what surprises me is that more patent attorneys, they're so nervous of using AI, they haven't realized the value add, how it can enhance the services that they give to people. And I think we've both had a few remarks on this, and maybe this is because we're just at the end of the learning curve. But one of the things I really wanted to sort of ask you about is, when it comes to future trends in AI, how do you see the workflows evolving?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in that, Karina. I mean,
yeah.
Look, I think first of all, one of the things that we're focused on is trying to capitalize on the fact that the way people are going to interact with information is forever changed. And it's not dissimilar from where you've seen, like the internet, 25 years ago. You can't go backwards. People are going to interact with data differently than they ever have before. And I think there's a lot of confusion in the market about AI, particularly in the IP space, where people don't really understand what it means. I mean, I've seen chats online where people talking about semantic search being a problem, but then they're actually describing LLMs, and it's kind of like not really the same thing.
Exactly.
I think there's a lot of unknowns about the technology, what it can do, what it can't do. There's a lot of press about things like hallucination, so people automatically assume that anything AI is a hallucination. And I think part of the problem is that everything is AI now, right? I mean, I think the term is being used so ubiquitously that it's actually creating confusion and making it hard for people to understand, well, how do I adopt AI to get efficiencies? And I think the best example I've really heard about this is like sort of the application of Excel. If you remember back in the day, I don't think a lot of accountants were fearful of losing their job because Excel came into place. It just made them more efficient. It made them better. It allowed them to do more work at a higher value. It became a force multiplier. And I think AI for patent searching is a very similar thing. If you have the right tool and you understand how you're going to use it within your practice, it's not going to change your practice in the sense that my work is going to go away. And I think that the AI providers that are out there that are saying things like automate these roles, I think they're missing the point. And what we're really trying to do around what we call curation of data, which kind of gives you more context in the search, which I think is what you were alluding to before. Yeah. And this concept of a library, so that your search persists off into the future. What we're really trying to do is create a force multiplier for attorneys.
Exactly.
That allows them to do what they do better, with more context, with more access to more information. It's making searches very interactive in a way, and it's making it persistent so that they can continue to support customers and evolve a search over time. And ultimately, we think it's going to advance research projects on the corporate side as well. So, we think of ourselves as helping, practitioners understand how to use AI within their practice, not telling them what their practice should be because of AI.
And I think that's very important, because so many vendors, and I've had a few speak to me, and they almost sort of talk to you as though you're about to be made redundant. And I'm thinking, you're missing the point. Patent attorneys do a little bit more than that. And it's almost like there's a sort of naivety about the roles, our professional regulations, how we have to conduct ourselves, that sort of gets lost in their sales pitches. And that's one of the things I think is putting people a lot off being curious. I mean, and that is really bad, because the only way that practices will evolve and adapt is if they are curious. find out about the different tools, because there are all sorts of different search tools and drafting tools, and some are generative, when it comes to drafting, but loads aren't. But there's so many, as you say, it's a force multiplier. It makes you superhuman rather than just pitching to a client, hey, I can do this. It's like, well, we can do this, and we use these tools to do so much more if you want us to do it for you.
Correct. And on the flip side of that, you're not superhuman because you use AI. Like if you
no. But it can give you that opportunity to do more at a price point if you're in private practice that your client can support, and if you're in industry at a price point that means that the business will see real value from this extra spend on those software tools.
Yeah, I mean, we do believe that AI and the way that we're trying to apply it is going to make good lawyers better. We presume that it's going to help them move up the value chain with their customers because they do have more access to more contextual information and analytics right within the platform.
Yeah,
that's going to allow them to do what they do good, which is advise and counsel. Right. That's where the real value is. And I think for a variety of reasons, the industry has become highly transactional in the way that they think about things like patent searching, for example. But one of the premises behind Fluidity IQ is that innovation isn't transactional. It's a constant. So if you're an attorney that's focused on like the transactional aspect of a search, then you're kind of missing opportunities because your clients are not operating transactionally. Now, because of the nature of how the industry has evolved, particularly some of the providers that have been around for a while, you start to see like interactions, I think, between the corporate and the attorneys. And we obviously talk to both sides all the time. And unfortunately, you see corporations creating like limitations. Hey, my attorney, I would like you to do this, patentability search, but I've got a budget of X. Yeah. And you're automatically limiting what the attorney can do. And in many ways, the fact that they're forcing the attorneys to act transactionally, and it's not good for anybody, in my opinion. So, we've tried to create tools that makes it easier to understand that context and the meaning and sort of the nuance around, a particular innovation that you might be searching for whatever reason you're doing. And that should position you to be able to provide a higher level of advice, counsel, guidance to your end client, which we think ultimately is going to help everybody be happier.
I think you're right. And I think the key thing is about thinking, as you say, of new ways of working. It's not transactional. It's about building a relationship and having a collaborative space where you can advise the client, okay, this is what you've done. They come back and say, hey, actually, we think it might be more like this. You can then work with them in an organic way. It's not that here are these 3 documents. You don't see anything else. You don't know if there's something else more relevant out there. That's not going to be of any use to anything other than if you're doing a pre-filing search or if you're looking at a particular infringement. It's about creating a data set that has value for that client and working with them to find ways of extracting value, which may be multifaceted. But that way, I think, is something that the tools of the future when it comes to the sort of search space, they can, and then if there's Fluidity, there are others out there in the market space. But there's so much more that people could do. But it requires setting back, understanding what it is you can achieve with the data, and we basically come back down to what insights in the data are valuable. And how can you maximize the value of when you do this sort of analytical work? Who are the stakeholders who have a vested interest? Because it's not just you're doing a transaction for this part of business and they just keep that there and then you forget all about it. It's about building on for that. And I think that's maybe one of the challenges in the IP industry lots of practitioners have, because we're not used to working that way, and it's an unknown.
Well, and I think we're trying to resolve that in terms of our own operating model. So it's kind of like, eating your own cooking in a way in terms of how we view the market as being non-transactional. And, our view is that a big part of our role, and you just used the word relationships, right? A big part of our role is really not selling our product. What we're really out there to do is to build a relationship and help a law firm, for example, or a corporation, understand how AI can be leveraged in their practice with their way of doing business. We don't think we're qualified to tell somebody how you should be doing search but based on what you do, we feel like we might be able to help you do it better. We might be able to help you extract more context. We might be able to help you, build richer reporting, for your end client, as the case may be. And to that end, even the way that we sell, for example, is non-transactional. Like we don't it's probably more than I should be saying in a meeting like this, but
be careful.
no, but
It's live.
we don't actually like pay commissions to salespeople. It's a salary, and our point of view on this is it's like eating our own cooking. It's like your job is to go out there and build a relationship, gain an understanding about what someone's doing, where they might need help, how this technology can help them, and then help them, figure out how to apply this. And if we figure that we can do that, then the sales will come, and it's good for everybody. And I want to build long-term relationships with customers, not quick and dirty transactional sales. And that's really that's part of our corpus of being. Really.
I think that's a very good sort of, sort of corporate ethic to have, because I think a lot of attorneys who have started to play with these tools, they get a little disillusioned after a while because they recognize some of the limitations. Mm-hmm. And some tool providers are really good at giving updates. They listen to that feedback. They're like you, they go out and engage, but not all do. And a lot of her oversold the tools in the first place. And I think that's where it becomes, quite problematic. I know people in private practice who've, had clients tell to them, oh yes, I've tested everything out on ChatGPT and did all this. And it's like, well, you may have disclosed your invention, but let's just put that to one side. What have you done? And it's about naivety at the client level, and sometimes naivety at the attorney level, and naivety in organizations. These tools need ideally to enhance the skill set of somebody who really understands what they're doing. They do break down the barriers for people who may not have such specialized backgrounds. But I think if you are a good attorney, whether you're working in industry or in private practice, having access to tools that help you add value to your services, whether it's demonstrating that value internally to other stakeholders or to your clients, who then obviously pass that information on. I think it's the use cases, the work that we are able to do with these tools is just incredible. And it's, we don't have to think, okay, we're only going to look at this for 15 minutes. We can spend the time, explore with the tool, work with the client, extract value. But it's a very different way of working, and it's a different financial model in some cases. And I think that's what's also quite intimidating to firms in private practice. How do they sell this on to their clients? How can they demonstrate the value?
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that it's all happened so fast. And I think that's part of it. So if you think about, again, the internet, which is often compared, to where AI is right now, and it was kind of a slow roll. But, all of a sudden, ChatGPT is available in generative AI, and boom, everybody's out there and they're using it, and you can implement it really fast. And I think that has complicated purchase decisions in terms of what tool do I buy? How do I even understand what tool is correct for me? That's why we want to spend so much time on education when we talk to prospective clients. Because not all tools are going to be the right tools, and everybody says AI. So is it really AI? And so
it's like saying, hey, we use physics. It's like, yep, that's great. And can we be more specific?
Yeah. So we pay very close attention when we built the platform to, things. And you mentioned security, for example, and using things like ChatGPT just out on the open internet, and making sure that, when you interacted with our platform, that it was, entirely your interaction. In fact, our whole platform is built around the concept of what we call a private innovation library. It's your library. It's where you put information so that you can innovate, but it's not accessible to anyone. It doesn't get shared. We don't learn from it. The LLMs don't learn from it. And the second sort of big, design principle that we put in place, and I would credit my business partner for this, is really coming up with, a model that was LLM agnostic. So everybody's going to use LLMs in their various tools. But we recognize that our customers aren't going to necessarily be able to keep up. And these guys are leapfrogging each other, whether it's Anthropic, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, they're all leapfrogging each other and spending so much money. That's going to continue to happen. You can't really expect the customers to know what's better for me, because one platform does a better job in synthesizing documents. Another one does a better job in creating content. And, so it's like, we try to evaluate that. And our platform is entirely agnostic. So we can unplug one and plug in another. And part of our value proposition, principally on the corporate side of the fence, is really, for really low dollars, you can make sure that you've got the best use of LLMs in a platform for your use case without having to spend a whole bunch of engineering dollars to monitor the market and test the market and do your own testing. And so we do that, as part of our platform. And for us, we have to, we can't be married to any one platform, and we have to be entirely secure and be able to stake our reputations on that. And I think all of these things contribute to making it really hard. If you're an incumbent system and you've got these new technologies, but you've got a 20-year investment in a platform, how do you just throw it away? You can't. That's tough. So how does the customer understand what's AI, what's not AI? How does this work? And I think what you see in the marketplace, not just in IP, but generally, is a really effective use of LLMs and some of the AI tools around what I call productivity, right? It's a productivity enhancement, which is why you see a lot of people in different industries worrying about their jobs, and I did a presentation a month ago at a school, and the teachers were like, well, does it make me redundant? And I thought about, our market with attorneys, and I was like, well, no, it doesn't make you redundant. Your job is still to teach kids how to think. And if you teach them how to think, they're going to be able to leverage AI very well in this learning environment. And I think the same thing about, IP attorneys. It's like your value is the nuance of what you know as an IP attorney.
Exactly. Yes.
And it's like the AI should help you expose that more.
I love that. I think that's a really great way. In other words, and this is why to me it's so important that people don't sort of stick their head in the sand and pretend, oh well, I don't use AI. I want to ban AI. I don't think attorneys should use AI. Some people do feel very strongly about that, but I think a lot of it is because they feel threatened. But also, of course, we're cautious. We work with the law. We have to look after our clients' best interests. We are always concerned about, well, if we use these tools, what could be the upshot? Are we really protecting our clients' interests? There could be litigation downstream. Maybe somebody makes a decision that, if it's not encrypted traffic to the server that's performing, where the LLM is hosted, if it's not edge processed, there could be all sorts of nuances. And for somebody who works as in chemistry or maybe even sort of, predominantly handles mechanical inventions, just knowing what questions to ask can be so overwhelming to sort of feel confident that you're addressing the concerns that your clients may have. And it's a big steep learning curve for a lot of people. It has to be made, but it's still very challenging at the moment for people to do.
And I think one of the questions to ask if you're evaluating an AI platform is, what do you do with the data? Right? Yeah. Like an AI platform that is just an LLM bolted onto the side of a database of some sort is going to give you limited value. But what are you doing to reduce the possibility of hallucinations and keep this conversation within context? What are you doing to keep it secure? What do you do with the underlying patent data that makes you feel confident that your search is going to produce the best possible results? And how do you do your search? Now, I think that's a secret sauce for a lot of people, but it's like how you execute the search can produce more relevant results. How you treat the data, when you onboard the data, can make your search more effective and more accurate. So I think there's a lot to dig in. I think it's really difficult for people to understand how to ask what kinds of questions. And I think they just have to find vendors that they feel comfortable having those conversations with. And if a vendor that's out there isn't seeing that as part of their job, then they're kind of missing the boat. And that's something I think we all need to focus on.
And I think it's a question of the pace, as you say. It's so fast. It's so you can turn around, but it's also fast when you're sort of working as an attorney with inventors. I know of a colleague of mine a couple of years ago who said by the time I'd got back to the office, they changed the invention again. And so we need these tools to be able to serve clients who are moving at quick silver pace when it comes to some areas of development, and that was an AI client as well. It's about understanding the complexity of and I deal a lot with complex systems, and understanding the complexity. How can you gain the right commercial protection for what people do? And as part of the search that you may or may not do, of course, you always get a search of your patent attorney. We're talking going back to pre-filing searches here, and that's just a small aspect of this area. Patent offices will do that, but actually you again get you get a document that lists some documents. That's not really giving you valuable data to guide insights into how you might make decisions commercially about whether you should really be thinking about pursuing a certain area that you're developing technology in. There's so many things we can sort of talk about here, and we've brushed on many of them, but I wanted to ask you just a little bit more about why Fluidity IQ? What was the lightning moment that you had that made you think, actually, this is something I really want to do. This is something I feel passionate about. What was there one, or did it just come to you?
Yeah, it's sort of funny because when I left my last position, which was in the IP space, to be perfectly honest with you, I thought I was retiring. Not that I'm that old, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to go do real estate. I'm going to spend time with my wife. I'm going to be on the boat. I'm a charter captain as well. And I did that for a while. And what really sort of triggered me, obviously I got a lot of phone calls from people looking to invest in the space. So I was able to keep my sort of eyes on what was happening in the space. And what became very apparent was that this transactional mode of operating within the industry really hadn't evolved at all. And then for anybody that used to listen to me in my previous role knows that I'm fairly passionate about building intelligence out of content. And I really didn't see, that happening in a way that I thought was useful. So I thought there was a real opportunity with the convergence of AI with this industry and how this industry hadn't evolved, yes, necessarily like how I thought it should. And then quite frankly, Fluidity IQ is nothing without a team. And there just happened to be a whole bunch of people that I have a lot of respect for and have worked with in some cases for as long as 30 years that were available and willing to join me on this venture. So it's a really highly experienced team. We have a lot of fun, building solutions, but it was, if I could bring a good team together of people that I enjoyed working with and that I had a lot of respect for, and this market opportunity still existed, to me, that I thought that was worth, spending time and treasure on to sort of build the product. And we've got a great vision in terms of where we're going, both technically and in terms of market opportunity. We're very excited about helping people get intelligence, like actual intelligence and context out of search, which historically was very transactional. So I think that's really where the passion came from. And to be perfectly frank, I just like building cool stuff. I think technology is cool.
You're not the only one there.
And it was pretty clear that, as much as I enjoyed being on my boat and investing in real estate, I wasn't really building anything that was as intellectually challenging and interesting. So this was the opportunity that we decided to jump on.
Fantastic. And just to sort of wrap up, because we're coming up to the end of this sort of session, in say 10 years time, how do you see the world, though in IP space, working with AI? Do you think there'll be any big seismic shifts there? Do you see where Fluidity IQ might fit in? Or just what about, will we have this sort of scenario where we have AI inventors? Will the law change and AI submitting applications and AI examiners? I'm not convinced that will be the case. I think like you, there'll be, better quality, in fact, of a lot of what we do because we'll be able to leverage the power of AI. But do you think there's going to be anything groundbreaking? Just, think of your Blade Runner moment, as it were. Where could that be?
I mean, if where we're putting our money obviously is on a belief that, AI has not been applied to solve specific use cases well enough yet. And I think you're going to see the very specific legal use cases, not just in IP, but across the legal profession and other industries as well. You're going to see those use cases evolve faster. You're going to see, I think, AI being much more pervasive. And I think you're going to see people are going to start to pay attention to the things that it doesn't do. Better. We spend a lot of time with contextual wrappers, around our LLMs. Not everybody does that because the LLM does such cool stuff right out of the box, So I think as people start to, and I think the media right now is appropriately focused on the infrastructure side of AI, where all the big money is. But I think the future in the next 5 or 10 years is really going to be on the application of AI, like the really smart application of AI to solve problems in different industries in better ways. And that's where we're putting our money as well.
Well, I have to say, I wish you all the luck with it. I think, as I say, these tools that I've been playing around with, they are fascinating. I urge everybody who's hopefully listening in on this, don't be nervous. Do reach out, ask questions. There's a lot of resources available, and there are lots of resources being made available both in the US and in Europe and in the UK in particular to help people navigate this time of change. It's incredibly exciting. I have to say, I think it's going to make what we do become incredibly enriched as attorneys. I like both being in private practice and working in industry. And I see there's going to be more synergy between both of those roles going forwards. It won't be maybe quite so sort of segregated. And I think that's something that is fascinating for a lot of people as well. And I think AI is going to be a huge enabler to make all of this happen. So Jeff, thank you so much for your time. One of these days we'll have to do a deeper dive maybe into Fluidity IQ and chat a little bit more about that. But I hope everybody's found this interesting. Do reach out to me if you want to know more, or to Jeff at Fluidity IQ. And I will wrap this up now. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.